Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm so glad that you're here. I hope that y'all are having a wonderful Monday so far. And we're here to talk about witches and history and to do makeup. So if that interests you, definitely stick around and watch the video because this one it blew my mind. It had so many 180s in it. This trial is set in the early 1400s, and for this type of thing to happen was just mind-blowing to me. I was not expecting the outcome of this, and of course I'm kind of edging to what may happen, but I'm not going to tell you guys. We're going to start from the very beginning. While I do that, while I talk about these witches and things like that, I do my makeup just to keep my hands busy. And so if you want to know what I use on my face, you can look down in the little notes description thing, and it'll tell you that everything I used on my face. I sometimes even put, like, if I'm wearing a certain sweatshirt or something like that, I'll put that in there too. Or earrings or something like that that I got from somebody. I will put that in the description as well. So let's get to our witch for today. Let's get this party started. So today we are talking about the trial that took place in Austria, and it's the Innsbruck trial, witch trial, okay? And several people were convicted, but this one group was, of course, ostracized, and we are going to get into all that fun stuff. But first, let's talk about Helena, if I can say this word without messing it up too bad. Scheuberin. Okay, Scheuberin. I got it. Helena Scheuberin was a member of the Innsbruck community, and she had gotten married. We don't really know what her maiden name was or anything. So when she married her husband Sebastian, they just added the IN on the end of his last name and gave her that last name when she got married, because the IN, his ended with the ER and hers had to end with an IN. And so that makes it sound more feminine or whatnot. Like that's how hardcore they were about being feminine and things like that back then already. And so she marries this guy Sebastian, and he's a catch, and she is too. Like she's beautiful. People really liked Helena. They really thought that she was a nice person. She had good faith, all this kind of stuff. But she had a couple of lovers. Now, this is the thing that bothers me when it comes to talking about lovers, okay, in these stories. These men can have all the mistresses in the world, but when a woman decides, and we don't even know if these guys were a mistress or I don't know what a mister. I guess that's what it is, a mister. And basically what I'm trying to say is that just because she had male friends does not mean that she was, doing the deed with them. You can have male friends and not be doing the deed with them. It's possible. I mean, it is. Trust me. I have more guy friends than girlfriends in my 20s because girls, they'd be a little jealous. But it is what it is. So anyway, our lovely Helena here is beautiful, and she supposedly has a issue with the cook in the kitchen at the Archduke's house. Okay, supposedly her and this Archduke, he had fallen in love with her, but she said no to him and decided to marry Sebastian instead. And so a year later, the cook, who remains unnamed because she accuses her of being a witch, he gets married to another lady. Well, at the wedding, Helena goes to the wedding, and she whispers in the bride's ear something like, your days shall not be long and healthy. Like, okay, like why are you saying that to me? Nobody really understands why she said this, but she said this to the bride. The bride took this as a curse, okay? Because I'm gonna bring in a guy that in a town 100 miles away was performing his very own witch trial that turned out to be successful, okay? And so parts of that trial were starting to float into the town of Innisbrook, right? And so people are starting to hear about this witch stuff, like, oh, there's witches here, and things like that. And so because of her second lover, Helena's second lover, who is a knight, and he ended up falling in love with her and was so super in love with her. But she was like, no, I'm married, like it even says they went out to lunch together one time. Like, she legitimately just wanted to be friends with these dudes. And they're trying to think it's something else, even though she's married. Maybe the first time she wasn't married, but it was obvious that she had her pick of who she wanted to be with. And she picked Sebastian. He was wealthy, not incredibly wealthy, but he had wealth. They had status, and so she stuck with that. Well, supposedly the knight dies from a broken heart, right? Well, his family doesn't believe that. Of course they don't. They're like, oh my gosh, she poisoned him. She had to have poisoned him, all this other stuff, yada, yada, yada. I'm legit just sitting there talking, and I don't have any of my brushes out. Yeah, I'm not doing my job too well today, but that's okay. Back to our story. Now, while all these things are happening over in Innisbrook, there is a town 100 miles away, and what they are doing is trying two witches, okay? And they use, of course, in this trial, torture to get what they want. Yep, they decide to use torture. And of course, anybody under torture is, they're gonna pretty much tell you whatever you want to know. Especially back then, was something that serious. They would rather just say, "Yeah, I'm this," rather and try to get out of it in some way, because they know that there's no way out. And so he tries these two women. One's name is Anna of Middleham, and the other one is Agnes Batterin. Okay, and these two women were in the Ravensbury executions, and that's one we haven't talked about yet. But a man named Henrik Kramer. It's hard for me to say these words because they're Austrian. Okay, my accent won't let me do these kinds of Hendrik. You know what I mean? Like we normally drop that. Anyway. So he arrives, and he actually tortures these women until they say that they did all these crazy things, like killed horses, caused storms, they worshiped the devil, had sex with the devil, they caused a man's member to disappear. Like, let me see that proof. I mean, not really, but like, there you could prove that easily, I mean, I'm just saying. So, because of all these wild accusations that are happening around town about Helena, because there's a brother to the knight, and his name is Hans. And Hans does not like Helena. She's like, I know she poisoned my brother. I know she did. She had to have. He kept spreading rumors throughout the town about her, saying, yeah, she did all these things. I know she did. I don't know why she's trying to deny it, and blah, 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 all this other stuff. And so he thinks that she poisoned him. Yep. Well, all the rumors start flying. It gets back to the archbishop, okay? Now, this is during the time where church ruled a lot of things. the Archbishop decides to call in Hendrik. Okay. And so Hendrik comes in August of 1785. Yep, 1785. All this happens so it's so quick. It all happens so quick, it's insane. He arrives. Now, when this man arrives, the first thing he does for 2 weeks straight is hold sermons. Okay? He held sermons every single day at the church since the day he arrived, and the only thing that he ever talked about was witches, and how there was witches everywhere, and how everybody was not safe because all of these women, he had a complex when it came to women because he was a celibate monk, but he was also an inquisitor. Okay, and you'll see what else he goes on to do later as well that ends up basically creating witch trials all across the world, So, but don't worry, we'll get there. Henrik is in town. He's doing his sermons. I'm just going to say something else, but he's doing his sermons. And I'm not going to lie. Now, I feel like, okay, so first off, the Archbishop asked for this guy to come to their town because he keeps hearing all the rumors from Hans. Hans' sister is the mistress of the Archduke. Okay. And so Hans is in and out of the Archduke's house like all the time. So he has a lot of pull basically in the community is what I'm saying. He has a lot of pull. So he's in the community and he's saying all these things about Helena that are not true. But this provokes the Archbishop to be like, maybe I should look into this woman. Maybe there is more to her than the meets the eye type deal. You know what I mean? And so that's why I say they call in Henrik. This is the whole reason they call this man in. Old Henrik is just to find the witches in their town, basically. I don't like that color, so I'm not going to use it. Sorry. But you know what? I feel like they sent out, like from Ravensburg or the other place that just, torched a bunch of witches. I feel like they sent like a dove to get there before Henrik, like with like I don't know if this is true. This is just my thoughts, okay? I think that they sent like a pigeon, a warning pigeon to Innisbrook, okay? To say, hey, there's a guy coming and he just lit 2 women on fire, and yeah, just because they were supposedly witches, and he did this under torture. You can imagine that the women in the town of Innisbrook is like, oh my gosh, this man is not a good guy, Plus he comes in spitting a sermon the whole entire time about witches are here, they're everywhere, they're here to get you, they're here to get your children. And at the same time, he's looking at all the women in this audience. And he's like judging them. He's like, if they look a certain way, they dress a certain way, and something's wrong with them, then if they're not listening to him with their full focus on this man, then they could possibly be a witch. According to Henrik. This is according to Henrik. This is how obsessed he was with witches. He did not like women, period. He thought they used their sexuality to gain favors and all of this other kind of madness. But you got to remember, he was a celibate monk. So, I mean, it's easy to say all these things that you've never experienced, I guess, supposedly. I love how people talk about things that they've not experienced, like they experienced it, but they haven't. It doesn't make any sense. When the Archduke meets this man, the Archduke's kind of like, I don't really know about this guy, y'all. I don't know. I feel a little bit shady. I'm going to let this happen. I'm going to go ahead and let him do his witchy trial thing, or hunt for witches, whatnot. But I need my homeboys, some of the other church guys. to kind of keep an eye out and let me know what's going on. Keep an eye on this guy because he felt like the archduke felt like something was happening. Okay, the archbishop, whatever. They were like, keep an eye on this guy. And I feel like the dove came down and they got it before he got there, and so they were pre-warned. That's I feel like. Because why would the Archduke call this guy in and then be shady about him when he gets there? Unless they just figured out, oh, he just murdered a bunch of people 100 miles from here. The Archduke is like, all right, I'm going to send my little spies with them, but they're going to be under the guise of helping him and blah, blah, blah. And they're going to keep an eye on him for me and kind of tell me what's going on. So, y'all remember Hans, right? That is the knight's brother. So, once Henrik comes into town, he goes, does these sermons, and he says to people, he tells them, yes, I would love it if you guys would come and tell me about anybody that you think could possibly be a witch. That's what he wanted, okay? And so that's what happened. The first family that stood up and decided to do something was the Knight's family. They were like, look, our man had eaten lunch with her the day before he passed away, even though he was sick before he even went. So, for all we know, he could have already been being poisoned by somebody else in his own family, maybe. Because we know that people poisoned each other back then because they were trying to get money and things like that from their family. So, I'm just saying, if he was already sick when he went to this lunch with her, then I don't see how or why they put this on her. But of course, she's a woman, so that's why. Because according to Henrik, all witches were women, all of them, every single one of them. That's why he was always eyeballing his congregation. Seeing what's she wearing today. Did she roll her eyes at a certain moment in my sermon. Even though this man didn't preach about God, the only thing he preached about was finding these witches and accusing them and torturing them until they confess and then putting them to death. That's the only thing that he wanted to do. And he didn't take into account that the man was already sick before she met up with him. Okay? Nobody knew that. Except for, I think Hans probably knew that. For all we know, Hans might have been the one that was doing it. And that was why he pointed the finger. Yeah. He pointed the finger at her. And then you got the bride, right? The bride goes to Henrik. Is like, hey, guess what she said to me? On my wedding day, blah, 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 blah. She said all this stuff. Well, that was a curse according to her. So at this time, even though all this stuff happened like 7, 8 years before, this made Hendrik think in his brain, okay, she's been a witch for 7 years. I got to do something about this. Oh my God. Now, our girl Helena is not one to back down without a fight. Okay? And she did not like this monk. She did not. She didn't like what he was preaching because she was a Christian woman. And he was in there talking about witches, which is something that was not supposed to be talked about. So she would make really crude remarks towards him whenever he walked by, She'd be like, oh, you dirty monk, and things like that. Well, during this time, there was also a time called Reform, where a Czech Republic guy had created, his name was, I know it was called Hussism is what it was. But anyway, they believed that the church had way too much power, which, they were correct. Because during this time, they ruled the courts, they ruled all that other stuff. And the separation, there was no separation of church and state or whatever. The church did everything. This movement was angry at the fact that there were guys that had these names like archdiocese, bishop, diocese, they had all these different kinds of people that never really did anything and so this is kind of what she preached on. I feel like she was one of the reformers because she didn't like this guy. And so for one thing, he's in a church preaching about witchcraft. To her, that's blasphemy. If she's a reformer, that's blasphemy. So she calls him out on it because she's a Christian woman. She's smart in theology. She knows exactly what she's talking about. So the first 3 days, she's so mean to him when he's there. And I don't know why he gets all in his feels, but he does. And so she tells him, I hope you get the falling disease, which means epilepsy, I believe. That's the only thing I can think of. And so he was like, what did you just say? So that was like throwing a curse on him too, as well. But she was very vocal. She was trying to stop other women from going to the church, trying to stop people from going. Not only did she not go because of one certain sermon that he gave, and I will tell you about it in just a second, she was determined to make sure other people knew that he was not a good guy and they needed to stay away from him, that he was dangerous, and that he was basically looking to kill half of his congregation because he thought that all women were witches. She was telling people that his sermons were demological, which is heresy, according to her. And so, but now she's got the finger, like I say, she's got the finger pointed at her, but she doesn't stop. She even continues to say, quote, when the devil leads the monk astray, he sprouts nothing but heresy. I hope the falling sickness knocks him on his head. Yeah, she was not shy about her feelings with this man. She was not shy. And, she was affluent in society as well. You know what I mean? She was married to a good man. They had good status and all this other stuff. And so she felt like she had a voice. And she used it. And good for her. Good for her. That's what I see a lot of with these witches is they break the mold. They break the generational curse. They do. They break the curse of having to, marry the guy their parents say, because of land and money and like all this other insane things. Women didn't have any choices back then. And it's sad, And so she wasn't about to let Hendrik be the guy that's gonna, screw up everything for them. So once she actually said, when is the devil going to come and take this man away? When he asked her, why do you keep saying these things? And she says, why do you keep preaching witchcraft and heresy at your sermons? I mean, she always had something to say to him, like all the time. So I think the last sermon of his that she ever went to, he was talking about a way to find out if somebody was a witch. And so he was talking about, it was like a jug of milk. If you lit it over a fire, excuse me, and it exploded. And whoever came running, because it would like attract the witch or whatnot, whoever came running was the witch. I mean, I don't understand that. In my opinion, I feel like I just saw my whole entire jug of milk, my whole day's work, just explode into fire. And you think I'm not going to run out there and ask you why you're doing what you're doing? You're just going to assume that I'm, some kind of devil person, some kind of witch. This man brought so much fear. He instilled so much fear in these people. It was terrible. And Helena knew that. And she was trying to protect the women from it. She knew the men were safe, pretty much. They were safe, the men were. She knew the women were not. And so she was very encouraging on keeping them away from Hendrik, and things like that. But, of course, the case builds and the case builds. And her mouth does get her into trouble, of course, but that's okay. She told him, this is the last time I'm coming to your congregation. I'm not ever coming here again because why are you talking about how to find a witch unless that means you believe in it? And that to her was heresy. That to her was like blasphemy, And she was like, so if you don't believe in it, why bring it up? Is what she asked him. So that was like the last time she ever went to any of his sermons. So at least she gave him a shot. She did. She tried. She's like, all right, I'll go see what this man's all about. I think she really went out of curiosity from what she'd been hearing from other people. Because then after that, he complained about how she never went to church after that. Never went to his church after that. Well, I wouldn't either. If anything, who was the real heretic here? Yeah, Henrik was. So, but the thing about Henrik is he got into some trouble. Yes, he did. Yes, he did. He got into some trouble. And, of course, our Helena finds out all about it. About some things that he did before he got there. Some things that he was put on trial for, What he did, he was investigated in 1474 and 1475 for slandering his colleagues. I guess that he thought that he was smarter than them. Of course he is, because he knows everything about witches and witch hunting and things like that, So he's like a certified witch hunter by this point, since he's already gotten the other two in the other place. So anyway, he also got in trouble in 1482, get this, for embezzlement. The embezzlement was he was selling pieces of paper to very rich Christians that guaranteed them a seat in heaven. Yeah. Now, this is also something that Helena looked down on because that's racketeering. You know what I mean? That's not a good thing to do. That's like tricking somebody, you know what I mean? And she was not happy about that. Like I say, she was a woman in her faith. Back then, if you didn't believe in witches, you didn't talk about them. So she's like, why is this guy coming here and pointing all the fingers to everybody when he is not that great of a person himself? It doesn't make any sense to her. And I completely I feel her frustration. Now, remember when I was talking about the Czech reformers? Okay, well, guess who didn't like them? Yeah, good old Henrik. He didn't like them at all. If I've been switching back and forth between Kramer and Heydrich, it's the same thing. I would probably just say, I guess, Heydrich from now on. I think that's what I've been saying. So, Heydrich doesn't like the reformers, because they're not for monks. They're against monks. They don't trust them. Because during this time, monks weren't like they are now. Like they're up in the mountains and then they, like monastery monks way up in the whatever. We're not talking about those kind of monks. We're talking about these little pious monks that walk around and think they're great and all that, and that they can, that just because they're part of the church, they can do, say, and anything that they want to, basically. And this is kind of what the Czech was trying to pull away from, was to not let the church have so much power, over the people and over the government, especially. So now Kramer is angry at, I say Kramer, see, there I go again. Henrik is angry because what's-her-face has been throwing curses around. He's heard from the bride. He's heard from the brother of the guy that passed away. And now he's gotten all this slander from her and all this other stuff. And so anyway, he's like, all right, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and write up some charges, and I'm going to, I'm going to take you to court. So he does. He writes up, says for suspected of double heresy, which is heresy of faith and of heresy of witches, promiscuous, which is something very terrible to accuse somebody of back then. Being promiscuous, somebody cheating on their husband. Not cool. Not cool back then, for back then, okay? Keep that in mind, okay? She was untrustworthy and she was independent. She was independent, and that's why he was scared of her. God, it's like, really? You can't be that slow. But I guess so. I guess you can be, you know? That's just the way it is. So he told the bishop she's deceitful, she's high-spirited, she's pushy. She should be tortured and assumed as a witch. That's exactly what Hendricks said. She should be a witch. She's a witch. And she should be tortured and treated as such. The bishop's like, all right, hold up, bro. You gotta slow down. You have to have a trial before you can torture anybody to determine if any torture is needed. You gotta provide proof of the things that you're saying that she did, you know? And so that's when he starts gathering evidence from everybody in town, okay? He ends up gathering up 63 people, okay? 63 people in this town get charged. Yeah. Or they get talked to about being a witch, basically. They weren't really charged. Only 7 were. Helena, and I'm going to tell you the rest here in just a second. So he was ready. He was like, all right, I feel like we need to take this to trial to see if she is, you know, something's wrong with her, she's a witch, whatever it is, we can figure it out. And so that's what they ended up doing. Before we talk about the trial itself, I want to tell you guys about the other 6 women that were involved in this with Helena, okay? We have Annelle and Elisa, okay? Annelle Notterin. I'm going to butcher these names. Just going to let you guys know that. Not on purpose, by total accident. Now, Annelle Notterton and Elisa Boheman were actually Jewish, but during this time they were massacred in the 1420s across Austria, and they weren't allowed to come back for 50 years. And when they did come back, they had to convert to Christianity or Catholicism or wherever they went to at the time. They couldn't be Jewish. And so they got these 2 women were actually incredibly successful. They were very smart, and this is something that he didn't like. And so Annelle he said that she was whipping an image of Christ. I doubt that. Elisa was bewitching her sister out of jealousy. It sounds to me like it's the other way around. It sounds like the sister's a little bit jealous, so she bases her happiness on her sister's happiness. So if her sister's happy, she's not happy. That's the way I feel about that. I feel like the sister should be on the chopping block here. But hey, it's okay. It's okay. Now, then we have Barbara. She's not one. Now, Annelle and Elisa were the 2 ones that were Jewish, and they had converted to Christianity. But this didn't matter to Hendrik. No. He didn't give a crap. He didn't care if they were supposedly, you know, Christians now. All he knew is they used to be Jewish. And in Austria, they didn't like them there in the 1420s. So anyway, we had another one, Barbara Huffassen, who practiced magic medicine. She helped heal people, like most witches do, or most healers do, because they still had natural elements and herbal remedies and things like that back then. And then Barbara Flagen, she made the cure for the sickness that the other Barbara did. So she got in trouble too. And then Agnes Schneerden, I am not good with these names. She cursed her lover. Okay. Now, the Barbara Flagen, the one that made the cure, she was also accused of putting a reed into some water at the river Inn to cause somebody to have diarrhea. Yeah. That, yes, that happened. That did happen. And oh my God, like seriously? Anyway, so then we've got Rosina Hotchwharton. Now, she supposedly smeared a shirt with magic paste, and whoever wore this shirt would get sick. Yeah. Like, what? A magic paste? Would you smear it with poo? I mean, I'm just saying, that's the only thing I could think of you could smear something with to make somebody sick. But I imagine they put that shirt on and be like, why do I smell poop? You feel me? It's like these accusations came flying out of nowhere. So he narrows it down to the 7. So by the time that Kramer is done investigating, he has rounded up 63 individuals, most of whom were women. There were only 2 men, 61 women and 2 men, okay? But he narrows it down to the 7. Only the 7 were arrested. And all the women were questioned. When they were questioned, they all denied being a witch. They're like, no, not in the context you're thinking. I'm not a witch, you know. And Helena straight up wasn't. I mean, she was a Christian woman who was, you know, a reformed way of thinking. She was thinking more against the church. And I guess that was kind of, in their way of thinking, a little witchcrafty. You know, just because you didn't like the church, that makes you a witchcraft. It makes you a witch. Okay. So now is when we get to the fun part. Okay. They've arrested these 7 women. All right. This is my favorite part in the whole story. And I cannot wait to tell you guys this shit. Now, don't worry. Nobody's been tortured yet. This is just a trial to see if they need to torture these women to get them to confess. And we all know what happens when you do that. Of course you're going to confess when you get the word torture slammed at you. So anyway, they set the trial Saturday, October 29th. And they take it to the town hall because they want everybody and their mom to see this. Okay. You've got the bishop of that diocese over there. You've got the archbishop's little men. I don't think he attended, but somebody had to be there to represent the Pope, and so that's who they were. But remember the sneakies. Some of the sneakies were in this group. All right, keep that in mind. Now, we get to court. It's 9 a.m. in the morning. Henrik is the judge of the court, which is so wrong because he has so much bias in this because you know, his opinion, he's using his misogyny, his opinion and everything like that is really, you know, it's making his decisions. He's not basing his decisions on facts or papers or any kind of evidence. It's just flinging accusations is basically what it is. So everybody files into the town hall, okay? And they're going to call each one up one at a time and question them about whatever they've been doing. And so who does Henrik call first? Helena. He calls her in, and she comes in. And let me tell you guys, it takes them a while to swear her in, okay? She feels like that by swearing on the Bible to tell the truth is like a charm or a mantra, okay? She feels like if she says this, then she'll be forced to tell the truth. You see what I'm saying? She's looking at it as like a magic spell, which in my mind, I've never thought about that, but I've never been in court. So, but it is like that, just like marriage and saying vows. Those are mantras. Those are things you're saying out loud. And so I didn't even think about that. You know what I mean? And so anyway, everybody and their mom's there, and he calls in our girl, Helena, and he begins to question her after she finally swears on the 4 Gospels of God. That's the only way that he could get her to swear on anything was the 4 Gospels of God. Okay. So after all that, that takes like an hour or so. A long time to get her to finally do what she needs to do to get on the stand. Now, finally, Henrik is like, all right, finally, now I can actually start questioning this woman, right? And then here's when everything goes wrong for Henrik. Oh, yes, for Henrik. So the questioning begins. He begins by asking her a lot of things, just things like, where are you from? What's your name? Just the questions that you're supposed to ask or whatnot in a courtroom. And then he gets on to, are you married? And she says yes. And he asked, how long? Now this kind of made people think, oh, he's kind of alluding to the fact that she was being promiscuous, that she may have had affairs with these two men, right? And so people are starting to get kind of uncomfortable, you know what I mean? The next question that he asked her, by the way, they've been married for 8 years, her and Sebastian at this point. The next question he asked her was, were you a virgin when you got married? I'm telling you, the whole freaking place lit up. There it is. Everybody's like, oh my gosh, you cannot ask a person that. That is not something that you ask a woman. No, you don't ask anybody that type of question. So then one of the archbishop's persons stands up, this man named Christian. He's one of the spies. He's like, all right, stop. No. No, 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 no. You cannot talk to a woman. You cannot speak to her in this manner. And what does that have to do with what we're on trial here for? Is what he's saying to her. Or what he's saying to Hendrik. Why are you saying these things when this has nothing to do with what we're here for? Then he says, okay, I want you to move forward. Just keep going, Hendrik. Move past this line of questioning because it's not cool. But before Hendrik could even start re-questioning Helena, which, by the way, Helena didn't answer the question at all. She just didn't say nothing. And so, anyway, Helena, she didn't say anything. And so, before he could go on with this line of questioning, Christian's like, have you even filed the correct papers? Are there any evidence anywhere of these women's crimes? Where is the paperwork for all of this in this trial? And so what he suggested was that they come back at 11 o'clock to let Henrik get his paperwork and stuff together that he did not have ready before court like he was supposed to. And then they would reconvene at 11 o'clock. Okay? So everybody goes home. What's his face? Henrik goes, writes all these papers, spouts off all this stuff on paper about how she's a witch. These other 6 women are witches as well. And Helena goes back to her cell, while they wait until 11 o'clock to come around. 11 o'clock comes around. Everybody goes back to the town hall. Henrik, all the guys, and in walks Helena. This time she's not alone. No, she's not. With her is Johann Merwat of Weerding. Okay, I'm sorry if I say all that wrong, but I got Johann right. Johann is from a university studying law. Yes, our Helena has got herself a lawyer like this. Okay, nobody knows where this man came from. He didn't even have a chance to be asked how he got there. He immediately walks into the courtroom and establishes himself with the stenographer as like, hey, I am so-and-so, and I'm here to represent Helena and all the other women in this trial. And then he proceeds to literally rip Henrik a new one. Straight up. Tells him, your notaries, they're fake. You hired some fake notaries. You have faked public official things, like the Pope, saying that he has faked official documents from the Pope. by using, stenographers and things like that he's hired to do his dirty work. Because we know he's a little bit dirty. We know this. We know he's a little bit dirty. Because he sold places in heaven. Give me a break. I can't believe anybody even fell for that, to be honest with y'all. The man was mad that Henrik didn't have any paperwork saying, any kind of proof saying that these women were witches at all. So that he seized them without any proper paperwork whatsoever. Man, this was like, hey, you're going to jail because I think that you are this. So Johann then asked Kramer to be dismissed and put in jail. Yes, he did. He was like, this dude is not the judge. So ladies, turns to the supposed witches and is like, y'all do not answer any questions from this man because he's no longer your judge. Okay? Now things are starting to get a little bit heated up. Getting a little bit heated up in the courtroom. And so Christian is like, all right, everybody needs to chill. He stands up because evidently if Henrik can't be the magistrate over this whole entire thing, then that's when the Pope has to step in. So Christian stands up and he's like, all right, look, chill out, guys. Let's all convene this on Monday, okay? We'll be back. Everybody needs to go home, chill, relax. We will reconvene this again on Monday, which turns out to be the day before Halloween. And this is how I know that this man is crazy, okay? Because before leaving the courtroom, he says, yes, Monday I shall have a decision by then. Like he's still the judge. A man of the Pope literally just told you, you are not the judge anymore, and you're lucky that you're not going to jail, because it was only a lawyer that was asked to put him in jail. That was up to the Pope's person to do that. So they give them until Monday. Now, when they reconvene Monday, they don't go to town hall. No, they do not. They go to this man's house. It wasn't back at the town hall, which is a good thing, because that means this was fixing to be swept under the rug, basically. And she knew that. And she knew that she had won. And so they go to a man, his name's Conrad Gunther, along with all the other authorities. Christian, of course, is included. And they smother the case. They close it. All the women were freed. The Archbishop actually paid their bail to get out because he felt so bad about everything that had happened, basically. He even paid off the debts that Henrik had racked up around town because he realized this man was not going to pay his bills, And then they asked Henrik to bounce. They were like, look, you got to go. We have no need for you no longer. But he stuck around, guys. This man stuck around thinking that there was still going to be a witch trial. He still was waiting for a witch trial for these women. This trial was never going to happen. This trial was over. This trial was swept under the rug. It was done. There was nothing that anybody can do about it. It didn't matter how long Henrik stayed in Innsbruck. It didn't matter. It wasn't going to happen. But the unfortunate thing is, because his ass is so chapped at this point, he decides to use the power of the printing press, if I may say so. And he writes a book, and it's actually one of the most terrible books that could possibly be written about witches. It's full of misogyny, full of lies about who witches, healers, and shamans are. Says they're mostly women, say they can fly on brooms. They say all these things. It's basically a guide to witch hunting, okay? And we all know the name of this book, all right? Kramer was silenced, but that doesn't mean the printing press was, okay? So he wrote, and probably most of you already know this when I said Hendrik Kramer, was the Malefice Maleficarum, which is the book that a lot of people used to become witch hunters that would later go on to do a lot more witch hunting around the area and so on and so forth. The book was basically a witch hunter's guide to demonology. And a lot of people use this book for a long time to do witch hunting and to have trials. And he, of course, encouraged torture in this. And so that's how torture came about, because this book that he wrote and put out that said that women were just the most awful things on the entire planet, and that they had sex with the devil, they had pacts with the devil, they enchanted men with their sexuality. You could tell he had a real complex when it came to sexuality and like sex and stuff. But I understand why, because he was a celibate monk. I mean, what's he doing with all that frustration? You know what I mean? He's taking it out on women. So Helena had won her trial, you guys. She won. This is a trial that was a win. A win, because he had just put 2 women to death 100 miles away in another town. But here, these bishops and these dukes stood firm and said, you have to have proof. Definitive, on a piece of paper, proof. But yet he still goes on to write this book saying that they sacrificed animals, they turned men into animals, they were sadists, they cheat, they lie, they steal, they were governed by lust. All this, I mean, this man goes on and on and on, and this is how this was basically became the how-to book on being a witch hunter. Now, even though our awesome witch today, Helena, did a great job by defending herself, she took advantage of the help that was there, which is something a lot of us don't do. We don't ask for help when we should. But she knew that this was a bind that she could not get herself out of. And so somehow, some way, she has a lawyer in this. In the 1400s, she has a lawyer in her witch trial. I mean, when I'm telling you, the man, Henrik, almost goes to jail, and then he asks her that question in court, and everybody's like, no, you cannot talk, you cannot ask a woman about that kind of thing. What is the matter with you? That is what the turning point of this was. When his misogyny showed and stood out, that was the end of it for him. That was the end. And even though he tried to stick around and make it happen, you know, the Archduke was writing him letters. First, he was being really nice. He was like, hey, man, you know, I don't know why you're still hanging out, but, you know, why don't you just be a gentleman, kind of bounce? And then he was writing him letters like, look, why are you still here, dog? You know, like, go. We don't want you here anymore. And so he actually writes that book in Germany, I believe. And it takes him a couple of years to write it, but he writes it. And in the book, there's no more legalities of the courtroom. He takes all that out, about having paperwork, about having any kind of proof at all. You know what I mean? He says no to all that. You don't need any of that. All you need is a confession, and you can torture them to do it. So that brings us to the end of our episode today. I'm so glad that you guys came and hung out with me. This one was so incredibly interesting to me. The outcome of this trial blew my mind. It really did. I did not see that coming. I did not see her getting a lawyer and lawyering up and all that fun stuff. Like, good for her, dude. Good for her. Like, she did her best by letting him know what her feelings were, and he in turn decided to put her in jail and do all these things, and so she defended herself, which she has every right to do. And I'm sorry, but for the 1400s, that's progressive. So I love it. Anyways, I love you guys. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today, and I hope that you come back on Thursday, because I will be here to continue the Native history from last week. We'll be talking about the Seminoles this week. Of course, we're still sticking around in the South. But anyways, I love you guys, and I hope that you have a wonderful Monday. And remember, if nobody's told you lately, I love you.